I'd like to call to order our meeting, and I'll begin with the land acknowledgement. That on behalf of the board, we acknowledge that York Region is located on the traditional territories of many Indigenous peoples, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis people, and that the treaty territories of the Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaty First Nations. Today, this area is home to many diverse Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of this land. We acknowledge that the Chippewas of Georgina Islands First Nation as our closest First Nation community. With that, any disclosure of interest from any of the board members? If not, I will ask Vice Chair Jackson and Member Purchell to confirm the minutes of March 26. Any errors, omission? All in favor? That carries. Presentation, Chief, we have one on the use of force.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Hammond shortly to introduce the team, but I just wanted to make a comment that the team that you have here today do an outstanding job with not only the report, but with this presentation and all the work they do with all of our members in that flow through that training and education area, corporate development. And I think you'll see the payoff with all of the work they've been doing for many years, refining our processes and our training to put our best foot forward as we push members back out into the community. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Deputy Hammond. She'll introduce the team and we'll take it from there. Deputy.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning through you, Chairman Pellegrini, and good morning to members of the board. It is my pleasure to introduce you to some of our corporate development members. I will start at the back. Superintendent Rhonda Corsi, she is the officer in charge of corporate development, and sitting with her is Staff Sergeant Josh McHugh, and he oversees our practical skills unit. And working with him is his inspector here is Blair Steer, who's going to be one of our presenters, and Sergeant Ricky Ho. And they're going to give you a great presentation on our annual use of force report. So I will turn it over to the inspector.
Thank you, Deputy. Good morning, Chair Pellegrini and members of the Police Services Board. So thank you for providing us with this opportunity to present to you today. Our presentation will provide the board with key highlights from YRP's 2024 use of force data. We will provide information and statistics informing the board on YRP's total number of public police interactions, total number of use of force incidents, as well as providing specific factors surrounding the public police interactions which led to the application and demonstration of force. Our goal today is to promote transparency by providing our community members with additional data and context surrounding the public police interactions which led to the demonstration and application of force. In addition to this information, we will review statistics surrounding our organization's ongoing focus on successful de-escalation techniques and training. Sergeant Ho will now bring you through today's presentation.
Good morning. So we'll start off with this slide, highlight our use of force report validation process. York Regional Police are the first agency to start a partnership with the Solicitor General Office and engaging subject matter experts from the Ontario Police College to enhance our data validation procedures. When an officer was involved in a use of force incident, the report will be submitted to the immediate supervisor before being sent to the practical skills unit for further validation. Data submitted to the Ministry of the Solicitor General is subjected to a rigorous validation process by ministry personnel before being approved for the inclusion in this report. This multi-validation process reinforces accountability and ensures that only verified data is used in the annual use of force report, further strengthening our public trust and transparency within the York Region communities. We will start by highlighting the trend we observed in 2024. The majority of use of force incidents in 2024 resulted from citizen-generated calls for service. This distinction is important, as the information provided by the caller, such as the nature of the incident, subject's behavior or the description often influence or dictate the officer's initial response and decision-making. For example, a citizen may report an assault involving a weapon, prompting officers to respond under the assumption that the subject is armed. Upon arrival, they may determine the subject is unarmed. However, out of an abundance of cautions and to protect public safety, officer may opt for a demonstration of force, such as displaying their conducted energy weapons or pointing a firearm, but without the actual deployment. In 2024, we've continued to see an upward trend in encountering with armed subjects. We will explore this trend in a greater detail later in the presentation. However, as part of our commitment to transparency and accountability to York Region residents, we will examine the role of an armed subject in use of force incident in greater detail. Overall, our officer continued to prioritize de-escalation. Despite an increase in armed subject encounters, actual application of force remained low across York Region. The following provide breakdown of armed subjects and the 5-year trend since 2020. Particularly, the red color bar represents firearm encounters. 68% of all use of force incidents involve subjects who were neither armed or perceived as armed by the officer at the time of the incident. While incidents involving edge or blunt force weapons have remained steady since 2020, there has been a notable increase in firearm-related encounters in both 2023 and 2024. This pattern aligned with a broader trend in firearm-related violent crime across Canada. The next slide will provide a detailed breakdown, including subject use of vehicle as weapon. This slide here explains the type of weapons used by subject. In 2024, 71% of all armed subject encounters, or equivalent to 181 individuals, involved firearms. This represents a 21% increase from 2023, when 149 subjects were reported in this category. 22% of subjects, or 55 individuals, were armed or perceived to be armed with an edged weapon, such as knives, consistent with the previous 5-year trend. 10% were armed with blunt force weapons, including objects like baseball bat or clubs. In some cases, subjects used vehicle as weapons by intentionally driving towards officers or creating a significant risk to public safety. This incident accounts for 4% of all use of force incidents. This slide shows the use of force options applied by our officers in 2024. Demonstration of force remains a highly effective strategy for gaining subject compliance during use of force incident. Of the 269 use of force incident in 2024, 81% involve a demonstration of force, such as displaying a conducted energy weapon or pointing a firearm without actual deployment. Although officer point firearm 152 times, they discharged a firearm at a person only once in 2024. Suggested our officer continued to show restraint, judgment, and utilize other de-escalation strategy as an alternative methods to resolve or to bring the intensity of the situation down. The conducted energy weapons continues to be an effective, less lethal tool. Officers continue to favor physical control techniques over impact weapons. Since introducing an enhanced subject control training in 2022, injuries to both officer and subjects remain below the 5-year average of 33 subject injuries per year. Enhanced subject control techniques incorporate team-based tactics rooted in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu principle, aiming to reduce the over-reliance on strike or impact weapon. And the next slide will present the actual statistical breakdown. So further, we'll look into the number of incidents. Firearms were used 18 times by our officers in 2024 to humanely dispatch injured animal, consistent with our 5-year average of 19.4 incidents per year. Majority of this incident were resulted from traffic collision involving an injured animal. Physical control were up slightly in 2024. However, no significant injuries or death as a result of the application of physical control technique. Despite a significant increase of officer encountering subject armed or perceived to be armed with their firearms, firearm point use of force has a slight decrease to 152 incidents from 165 in 2023. Conducted energy weapon, as mentioned previously, continue to be an effective, less lethal tool, and its use remain consistent over our 5-year trend. This slide shows an alarming trend. Between 2020 and 2024, we observed a 188% increase in firearm-related encounters. From 2023 to 2024 alone, there was a 21% increase in incident involving subject armed or perceived to be armed with a firearms. We're now going to look at race identity-based data. As of January 1st of 2020, under the Ontario Anti-Racism Act, police services across the province have been mandated to collect data on the perceived race of individuals involved in use of force incident. Subject race category in this report are defined by the Ministry of the Solicitor General as following: white, Black, Middle Eastern, East, Southeast Asian, South Asian, Latino, and Indigenous. In each use of force incident, officer must select from one of the 7 perceived race of subject. It is important to recognize that because this data is based on the perception rather than self-identification, there is potential for both over and underrepresentation for certain racial groups. Of the 393 subjects involved in use of force incident, this pie graph depicted the perceived race breakdown. The top 2 categories were 29% Black and 28% white. We're now going to look into the use of force incident involving an armed subject. 92% of all use of force incidents were citizen-generated calls. Information provided by the caller, especially if it involved the potential presence of weapons or violent behaviors, often influence and dictate the officer response option. For example, an officer dispatched to a weapons call may enter the scene prepared for a higher threat situation, which limit certain lower level response options, and may need a demonstration of force, such as pointing their firearm for public safety. Therefore, nature of the call is the leading reason why officer apply force on an unarmed subject, followed by subject perceived to have access to weapons at the second highest category. We're now going to look at the top 2 types of weapons encountered in 2024. Again, 68% of all use of force incidents involve an armed subject. The following chart breaks down the armed subject's perceived race. In total, 181 subjects were armed or perceived to be armed with firearms in 2024. Following firearm, edge weapons such as knives represent the second highest number of weapons encountered in use of force incident. However, the number of edge weapons encountered remains steady in our 5-year trend, with only 55 subjects. Last year, the board requested more information regarding subjects' residency. In response, we actually enhanced our data collection and analyzed it through secondary data source, such as record management system or other investigative techniques. In 2024, nearly half of all use of force incidents involved subjects who were non-residents of York Region, an approximately 10% increase from the previous year. Of the 393 subjects, 119 were non-York residents. We're now going to look at the officer assignment and their characteristic. 72% of all use of force incidents involving frontline uniform officers, followed by 22% from the emergency response unit and K-9 unit. And the remaining 6% involve plainclothes officers from investigative services. Uniform officers typically respond to both citizen-generated and officer-generated calls for service. In 2024, 92% of all use of force incidents originated from citizen-generated calls, reinforcing the prominent role our frontline uniform officers play in these encounters. Officers in specialized units such as Emergency Response Unit and K-9 are frequently dispatched to higher risk call involving potential violence or weapons, and they're the second highest category following uniform. As previously mentioned, de-escalation strategy is our priorities. So first, let's define what de-escalation techniques involved. It involved communication, containment, cover, distance, repositioning our officers, teamwork, and time to neither bring the intensity of the situation down or resolve without the actual application of force. On July 7, 2023, the Ministry of the Solicitor General Office, the Public Safety Division, introduced the Ontario Public Police Interactions Training Aid to replace the old 2004 use of force model. This updated framework emphasized cooperative public police interaction grounded in principles of procedural justice and de-escalation. In response, YRP Training and Educational Bureau, particularly a practical skills unit, promptly adopted this new model, ensuring all of our members were supported through this transition. Reflecting in our training and a commitment to continuous improvement, officers employ de-escalation in 90.8% of all use of force incidents, effectively reducing the need for physical intervention.
Thank you, Sergeant Ho, for that. So just to the board, I just want to say in summary, it's very important to acknowledge the significant increase in the number of armed subjects involved in the use of force incidents. Of those subjects, 181 were armed or perceived to be armed at the time of the incident. Despite these significant increases, YRP use of force incidents continue to be the lowest in the GTA and across the country. In addition, YRP officers utilize de-escalation techniques during almost 92% of all use of force incidents, demonstrating the officer's ability to apply critical decision-making skills and training concepts during these high-risk incidents. Lastly, the data displays the vast majority of use of force incidents originated from a citizen-generated call for service, accounting for 92% of all use of force incidents. During these incidents, YRP members responded to the safety concerns of the citizens and upon arrival made the decision to apply force based upon the subject's behaviors and enhanced training principles. YRP will continue to utilize our use of force data to inform our training practices and methodology, ensuring that our members' application of force is based on the principles of necessity, proportionality, and reasonableness. We thank you, Chair Pellegrini, and all members of the Police Services Board for your ongoing support and welcome any questions from the board at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector, and thank you, Sergeant Ho. Wonderful presentation. I'll open it up for questions and I'll also bring forward 8.4. I do have one myself. I'm pleased to see we are the lowest in the GTA. Did you guys track where the handguns or where the firearms are coming from?
Well, I can start, and I'm sure any of the deputies here can top this up. We've been talking about this for many years. They're coming across the border for the most part, and we haven't seen that trend change. So those are my comments. Deputy, do you have any further comments on that?
Certainly. Thank you, Chief. Good morning, and through Mr. Chair. So I'll give you an example. Last year in 2024, there were 94 crime guns seized. Of those 94, 67 came back as being imported from the United States. We were able to trace those. Unfortunately, there's a number of guns that we can't trace back, either because we're unable to, because the serial numbers have been removed from the firearms or that they're privately manufactured. So it doesn't give us an exact pinpoint as to where those guns were trafficked, but one can surmise from the evidence that we have of the other 70% of the guns that we have seized that they are from the United States. Ohio, Georgia, and Florida are the top 3 states that are the origin countries or states from these firearms that we've seized in 2024. And in 2025, we've already seized 25 firearms. And of those that are currently being traced that are coming back, the majority are coming back to the United States as well.
That's a shame, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Taylor.
Yeah, I guess the same. I mean, there's lots you could drill down on, but that's the obvious area for concern and interest and attention. And I guess to the chair's point, so we know they're coming from the U.S. And my one blunt question I don't even know the answer to is what's the consequence of bringing a firearm across the border? I'm not talking about just the use, just bringing it across. What's the offense? What is it?
So there's a trafficking offense for bringing a firearm across the border. So it's rather significant. The charges do result in jail time. We've had a number of investigations currently before the courts. The fact of the matter is, though, the punishment doesn't seem to be a deterrent enough for people to disengage. It's quite lucrative, and one can imagine cost versus benefit, that the benefits outweigh the risks. So it's been a constant battle. We are working with our CBSA partners and have been for quite some time. And there's been a significant amount of lobbying that the chief and other chiefs in this country have been putting forth to the government to help curb this issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's stating the obvious, but it's an obvious point that needs to be stated, which is that, I mean, with those kinds of numbers, our frontline officers are considerably more at risk.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I hate to be this blunt, but you can only buck that trend for so long. You can only do everything we can to do your job as well as you can to avoid serious consequences. But with those kind of statistics working against you, it's very concerning. And I guess, you know, I'm sure everything is being done that can be done. I don't know what more lobbying, if there's people who have come up with better ideas or avenues or stricter penalties are being, you know, proposed, but that's something obviously that as a board and as a service, we should be laser focused on, because if the safety and well-being of our frontline officers is first and foremost, and that I haven't been around long, but I can't imagine there's a trend line that's more concerning than that one. So it's I don't know. Is that number, that kind of increase, consistent across Canada? Is it?
Well, I can start. First off, thanks for acknowledging how concerning it is for the board, because it is definitely concerning for us. We've been talking about seeing more guns at the front line or seized by frontline officers for a number of years now, prior to your time on the board here, Mayor. But as you saw the last 2 years, 23, 24, that bar chart, those 2 orange bars that were way up there, that's a significant increase. And so what we started to see a few years ago, we're now continuing to see, and I don't see it changing. So, you know, we have to continue to lobby for changes. We definitely have to continue to lobby for tougher sentences as it relates to gun crimes. If the penalties are not substantial enough to deter people from carrying handguns, trafficking handguns, using handguns in the commission of an offense, we're going to see this trend continue. You know, I've mentioned it before, it's an all hands on deck approach, right? We can't have the policing side of the business differentiated from the criminal justice side of the business and expect that that's going to solve the problem of guns in our communities. It just isn't. So, to whatever extent there's opportunities for the board to lobby further, for the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police and the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police to continue to lobby, those efforts will be moved forward either at definitely at the chief's level. There's a lot of conversation about this. Same conversation was had as we continued to see vehicle thefts and what was going on at the ports, right? Border issue, port issue. Same thing. We were talking about guns back then. And I say back then, it's only a couple of years ago. We still have those issues, but not as prevalent as they were 2 years ago. So yeah, we have to continue to do whatever we can to make changes to combat this issue. Like it's a trend we're all concerned about. Yeah, go ahead.
And thank you, Chief. And one more thing I would like to add to Mayor Taylor's question through Mr. Chair. So and nationally, the trend is slightly different east to west. In the West Coast, there is a higher instance of privately made firearms. So the use of 3D printers, going through our stats from last year, it would account for approximately 5% of the firearms that we've seized as crime guns being privately made or attributed to a privately made firearm. Whereas in provinces like BC, they've seen a significant increase in the production of privately made firearms. And there is a national strategy addressing both the manufacturing, the distribution of goods, materials that could be used alongside of 3D printers as part of a strategy to deter and to inform the general public on the dangers of privately made firearms. And there will be some publications coming soon nationally to be distributed, even at the school board level, to help people and parents understand the dangers of privately made firearms and how 3D printers can be utilized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other member Faisal?
Mr. Chair, through you, Sergeant Ho. I look at your slide 2, you're telling us that there were 269 incidents. On page 4, you've got 372. What is the correlation between the two?
So through you, Chair, explain. So an incident like that, so in each incident, sometime, under the provincial mandate, each officer have to submit their own individual report. So a single incident involving multiple officers could result in a multiple report being submitted, even though it's a single event. That's helped us to best capture the decision-making process of individual member at the time of use of force incident. We can study that a little more in depth.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, Member Purcell?
The most striking statistic is the 108% increase. This is something that we've talked about and certainly something that we have discussed at the board level. And that is a threat both to the officers and to the public. That's not going to reduce. I expect it to continue to trend up for the reasons indicated by the deputy and the chief. Printed guns are not going to stop. They're going to be slowed somewhat. But in fact, the probability of printed guns is going to increase, as is the continuing distribution of weapons coming up from the United States. It's an easy thing to transit across the border. It's, as the chief says, it's a very lucrative thing to transit across the border, and it's part of a larger issue of cultural change. We are not the community we used to be. We're different. And young kids in particular are different. Their attitude towards carrying and discharging weapons is fundamentally different than a generation ago, which is not to blame all young people, but it is to say that the threat has risen dramatically. There have been discussions and I have to commend again, YRP. Yes, I'm a fan. I'm obviously a fan, but the training, equipment, and tactics procedures that YRP are employing are leading edge. And I believe that they are, as I've said to many of the members here, a template for changes that need to be made in policing across the board in Canada. We're behind the curve on this, way behind. The de-escalation figure is the other side of this. And again, you're to be commended for the fact that your de-escalation numbers are up in relationship to the threat figures, which are also up. So that delta between those 2 points is a tribute to the way you do policing. And again, it's a template for things that are going on and need to be addressed. There are a number of issues that have bugged me, as I've told a number of people over the years, and I'm appreciative and believe that the board will support the fact that we need to upgrade equipment training and tactics and support that across the board, because we need to protect the police officers that provide public safety for all of us. And there is a project underway, and I don't know if this is the right time to comment on that, that there is a process in place to upgrade both equipment and other things that are essential to the continuing improvement of delivery in the face of an increasing threat. That threat is not going to go away. It's going to continue to climb, and I would expect these figures next year, when 2025 comes in, the number will be in fact higher. There's no reason that it shouldn't be. We are not getting better at things, we're getting worse. So the question is, how do we mitigate most effectively? And again, I think YRP is to be commended across the board for the tremendous work that it's doing and providing, again, a template for other police forces to learn from best practices that are being developed and employed right here. And again, that's a tribute to you. And once more, I don't know if you want to comment on some of the new equipment and things that are being done by that need to be done and need to be transitioned to make policing safer, because we start by keeping police officers safe so they can keep the rest of us safe.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Purcell, and we do appreciate that. And what I can say, and it's been shared previously, is predominantly as a result of the changes in the legislation with respect to body armor plates. So there was, I know yourself, you came in and we shared with you some of the products we're looking at. We're in procurement right now. I don't know that what the stage that's at, but ultimately there is body armor that has to be heavier plates for the front and the back to protect the officers. Also, there's a requirement for enhanced breaching equipment to access buildings or locations to get to people that may be at risk by an assailant with a weapon. Further, in addition to that, there's some training with respect to, and we're going to be the first police service in the province also that came through the changes in the legislation to have some enhanced mental health crisis training, and that will leverage the use of virtual reality. And it's we're going to have a train the trainer program. I know the inspector and the sergeant, as well as the command team, have also reviewed all this training. So we're going to train some of our own members so that it can be rolled out to the entire membership. And it's effectively giving them extra tools to keep themselves safe, but also bring, if there's a person in crisis, not everyone is a criminal in these cases. There are people that sometimes have some mental health issues and they become persons in crisis. They may arm themselves. So there's some strategies and techniques that are being brought forward. So that's just a snapshot of it. I would also like to comment that with every use of force report that gets submitted, it's just not the statistics that get reviewed by the sergeant. It's looking at trends and how it shapes and informs our training for our in-service training. Our members are required to go annually, but we don't wait until something happens annually. If there's a trend that's come up through a review of the use of force reports, it typically will involve a conversation maybe with the member, because I won't call it a debrief, but just something, what went well, anything we need to know, and how could we improve our training to help better prepare you when you're encountered by the situation in the future. So every one of those reports are reviewed through that lens.
Just the final word on that. Again, I think the most intriguing thing about what you've presented, and this is a wonderful presentation, thank you, is again, the threat is not only up, but it's going to continue to go up. But the fact that you're meeting with increased de-escalation, again, is a tribute to your professionalism, your training, and the way you're managing the very difficult task of policing. Well done to all of you.
Excellent. With that, sir, well said. You'll move the presentation and receipt of the 8-4, the annual report. Member Purcell, seconded by Member Faisal. All in favor? That carries. We have no deputations. Communications, there's 2, 7-1, and 7-2. They're here. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, seconded by Member Purcell. All in favor? That carries. Consideration and adoption of reports. The chief would like to speak to 8182. We've done 84. Are there any other items members wish to pull? If not, I'll ask that there's a mover, Madam Vice Chair, 8385. Member Purchell, you'll second. All in favor? That carries. 81, sir. Annual statistic report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Salia to give you a brief update on our 2024 annual crime statistics. Super.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor Pellegrini, thank you for having us here this morning, members of the board. Just with a quick overview of the annual stats, some of the things that we want to highlight, we'll start off with the clearance rates. Our clearance rates are up 5% from 38% to 43% year over year. As it relates to violent crime, our clearance rates remain high at 49%. Our property crime clearance rates have improved from 23% to 28%, an increase of 5%. As a whole, our property crime offenses are down by almost 5%. Our weapons offenses are down by 14.6%. Our break-in enters have seen a marginal increase of 2%, and our hate incidents are down by 19% as well. As it relates to violent crime, we are down by 4% as a whole. This includes home invasions that have decreased by 15% and retail robberies that have decreased by 20%. Our carjacking offenses are, however, up by 40%. This can be attributed to, we believe, our enforcement efforts in combating motor vehicle thefts, which I'll touch on in a minute. We're down 36% in motor vehicle thefts, but the demand for motor vehicles remain high. We have made it very difficult for these offenders to steal vehicles from your driveways and from your homes. But the unintended consequence of this is a resort to violence and carjackings. Auto thefts, as I just mentioned, are down 36.1%. And to help provide a little bit of context on this, I think it's important to show just the tremendous amount of work that's gone into this. Provincially, that number is 17.4%. Nationally, that number is 18.6%. We are more than double the provincial average and the national average, a true testament to the work that's happening on the ground from our frontline officers and investigative services. One of the reasons why we're seeing these marked improvements is we've invested an incredible amount of time and resources into going out to our communities and conducting crime prevention campaigns. That could be door to door, handing out Faraday bags, handing out crime prevention pamphlets. But we're using data to do this. We're not necessarily going out there randomly. We are going into targeted areas. We've leveraged business intelligence. We've leveraged our analysts who have identified high areas of crime where we're forecasting this to happen. So we've not only utilized this for our crime prevention campaigns, we've also utilized this to leverage our enforcement efforts, innovative data-driven solutions that are targeting high crime areas. We are not waiting for the crime to happen. We are going into these areas where crime is forecasted, and we are being proactive, whether it's directed patrols or whether it's conducting enforcement as a whole. We've seen this with initiatives like Operation Auto Guard and Operation Strike Plate. Just to give you an example, Operation Auto Guards 1 and 2, as a whole, we seized 95 vehicles worth $5.4 million. We made 73 arrests. We laid 411 charges. We handed out over 30,000 Faraday bags and crime prevention pamphlets, again, not randomly, but targeted into these high crime areas. Project Dusk, coming out of our Integrated Property Crime Task Force, they charged 20 individuals with more than 230 criminal offenses and seized over $2 million in property. Through these ongoing initiatives and strategic partnerships, we are confident, and we know that York Regional Police continues to lead the way as it relates to combating organized and complex crime, not just here provincially, but nationally. On a final note, it's important to note when we're looking at the 5-year trends that there is a COVID component to this. 5 years ago, when COVID was happening, you're going to see that crime was low. That's no different than the restriction shut everything down and made it very difficult for these offenders to commit crime and break into your house. As you're seeing after the pandemic, we are actually coming back to pre-pandemic levels. So what might appear as a surge is actually a return to normalcy. And that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It is a true testament to the great work that the men and women of York Regional Police do. And I love that we're proactive and that we are leaders in policing. So thank you for that. Any questions? Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Through you to Superintendent Salia. Thank you. It is, I think it's a lot of good news with a little bit of a bitter pill on the end. So I think that first off, congratulations. I know you were smiling with AutoGuard. I know that was one of the projects that you were responsible and involved with and was very successful. So congratulations. But I do want to go back and speak to with respect to theft of vehicle. I believe you said there was a 31%, which is excellent. But what concerns me is the carjackings. With I think you said it's up 41%. I just want to clarify if that was if I wrote that correctly through the chair.
Through the chair, we are up in carjackings 40%.
40. Okay,
That's correct.
Off by one.
Yeah.
Okay, through the chair, I guess my concern is that theft of the vehicles, to me, I would consider as a layman as non-violent. They come in the middle of the night, they take your car and they take off with it, whatever. But what concerns me is the carjackings. Now, of the 40% of carjackings, have you broken down the stat as to what was a home invasion to get keys? Do we have that breakdown? Because that is very, very concerning. I mean, carjacking of any type, whether they grab you and throw you out of the car, I mean, that's terrible. But do we break it down between just a simple, like driving along and they bump you and they take your car, or whether they're breaking into your home when you're at home, like a home invasion, strictly for the keys of your high-end vehicle? I just wondering if you break that stat down.
Thank you for the question through Mr. Chair. So to answer that specific question around a break and enter or a home invasion for keys, it's very difficult to determine specifically because we don't necessarily know what the motive is when they enter. So to give you a categorical black and white answer in terms of what that number is, we don't. We do track the number of home invasions in which cars are taken, but then there's also the possibility that the car's taken as a means of opportunity, right? So it's very difficult to pinpoint that number, although we do try to keep those statistics when we are reporting.
Okay, so through the chair to Deputy Ameda, thank you for that. I guess then we then would have a stat with respect to a home invasion where a vehicle was taken. We would have that statistic.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so do we have a stat on how many home invasions occurred in York Region in 2024? And of those, how many they took vehicles?
I don't have that with me, but I could get that to you.
I think it's interesting to look. I think to me, Chair, thank you so much. That is what's to me is very concerning. I think all the good work that we've done with the Faraday bags and with everything, and just people being aware that they're getting desperate and they're looking at what I would call extremely violent ways of taking vehicles. So I'm sure that you've got a plan in place for that, and I thank you for that. But overall, a great report. Happy to hear that with that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
And Member Taylor.
Yeah, just in the family domestic violence area, there's a couple of slides. I'm just trying to understand stuff, being new again. The first one is the type of relationship under family domestic violence, mother, son, mother, daughter. That those am I fair to assume that those could be in either order? Like they're not causal. It's not mother's violence to son, mother violence to daughter. Is that correct? So on the family domestic violence slide of the full report, type of relationship is listed, and it says mother/son, mother/daughter, father/son. I'm assuming because of the 72% male accused that is not the order in which it's occurring. It's just they could be flipped. It could be son, mother. Correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah. And then my next question, maybe is naive, but in both family domestic violence and intimate partner violence, there is a category of criminal and non-criminal, but it's violence. I guess I'm confused. What is non-criminal violence in both categories? How do you define the difference between the two?
So it's also titled number of incidents. So if someone reports an incident that's domestic in nature, when the officers arrive on scene, it's determined at that point whether there was violence or was it just a reported incident.
Gotcha. So that's, And those are categorized differently because the ones that are under the category criminal charges were probably late. And the ones that weren't, they probably weren't late. Is that
Correct.
fair to say? Okay, got it. Thanks.
So Member Taylor, you good to move receipt? Seconded by Member Faisal. All in favor? That carries. Annual report on hate crime policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy McCloskey to add some comment to this report on hate crime. Deputy.
Thank you, Chief. And through you, Chairman, good morning. Good morning to all members of the board. I'm well aware that you've read the report, so I'm not going to reread it back to you, but I will talk about a few things from the report that I'd like to highlight that I think are very important. So, essentially this report identifies criminal and non-criminal incidents committed against persons or property that were motivated by hate, bias, or prejudice. But importantly, it also includes strategies and prevention methods that York Regional Police employ to address hate crimes and hate bias incidents. Within the report, there are 9 key strategies that focus around engagement, education, enforcement, training, and victim assistance. These strategies, very importantly, look at principles of policing with a global mindset and policing through the lens of human rights. The Hate Crime Prevention Unit also recognizes, now more than ever, especially that it's incumbent upon our own membership to stay abreast in real time of the impact of world events and the impact and effect they have on our local communities. So to that end, and thank you to the chief and to the board for allowing us to expand on our hate crime prevention unit in 2025. We will be doubling the size of the unit to having 5 full-time investigators and 2 detectives. That second detective is on board now, and the 3 additional detective constables will be added very shortly. They've just recently been identified in the last week or so. So I want to focus a little bit on some important stats from this report. With the key item being that in 2024, although not by significant numbers, I am happy to report that the stats have gone down, both on criminal hate crimes and hate bias incidents. And specifically, we're at 276 hate crime criminal incidents, down from 298 in 2023. And with respect to hate bias incidents, we're at 179 this year, down from 268 in 2023. So what this really speaks to is the amount of work and engagement that the unit is doing in the community, with youth, with faith leaders, in faith establishments, to ensure that there's a real stress upon teaching people about tolerance and acceptance. And a lot of that programming also gets done through our community safety village. What's also important is that we encourage the reporting of these incidents right from when people arrive in this country through our welcome centers. So that for me is a good relationship where we are encouraging people to report, and people are reporting more frequently, but yet we still see the numbers overall going down. So that means that our work in the community is being felt. I want to point out one area, because it sometimes causes confusion in the stats report, where you see 3 different types of mischief being identified. You'll see mischief graffiti, mischief property damage, and mischief hate. Mischief graffiti is, as it sounds, it's when people are tagging items with graffiti. The property damage is, as it sounds, damage to property that may be a place of religious significance, but not a place of worship. Like Jewish bakery as an example, where someone throws a rock through a window. And then mischief hate is mischief committed to faith institutions and or memorials, war memorials, and cultural property. So that's why we do separate those 3 categories, and those are the highest incidents of hate crimes that we actually have, followed by assaults. So I'll leave it there, subject to any questions that you have.
Sure. Member Taylor.
Yeah, just trying to understand stuff a little bit here. Is there the numbers from the first categories of hate crime incidents, then to the ones you were talking about by most serious violation with the mischiefs, the numbers are very similar, but they're not identical. And then, so my question in both areas, both categories, is this the number of hate crimes, or is this in total, or is there a likelihood or possibility that, for instance, you could have that counted as a race, one of the race categories and one of the religious categories, and that was one hate crime?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Chair. If we're looking at the tables within the report, table 1 and I believe table 2 as well, let me just scroll down to be sure. Yeah, those both refer to criminal hate incidents, hate crimes. And then as you move into table 3 and table 4, we're talking about hate bias incidents or non-criminal incidents. And they are separate stats, separate numbers.
Yeah, I know, but let's take the first table, for instance,
Okay.
by primary motivation. Is that, when I look at the totals at the bottom, does that mean that in each year there was 274, 298, 276 hate incidents of hate crime? Or is it possible that the way the data is collected, that there was a hate crime that was categorized here as South Asian and Muslim, and it was one hate crime?
The totals on the bottom, the 274, 298, 290, and 276 are totals, total hate crimes reported.
Okay, so that means then every hate crime gets categorized as only one thing. It's either religion or race. It's not both. Ergo.
You know what? I don't want to speculate on that answer.
So it sounds to me, through you, Chair, Mayor Taylor, if the question is, could there be duplication?
Well, I guess I'm trying to.
I know what you're.
Is that the number of hate crimes, or is that the way it's categorized, and the number of hate crimes is actually 230? Not that that's not it's still terribly concerning. I'm just trying to understand the data, so when I look at it in the future, I get it.
Well,
So-
we'll have to get you a
Yeah,
better
that's
answer
fine.
on that. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks. That's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Any further questions? If not, Member Taylor, you'll move. Member Kozlow, you'll second. All in favor? That carries. Takes us to item 9, which is our unfinished business, and this has to do with the annual report. I'll ask. Thank you, Vice Chair Jackson, seconded by Member Purchell. All in favor? Carries. We've got other business, upcoming events. You have anything to say to that? Just let Mackenzie know which ones you are attending. And we're adding the Crime Stoppers Dinner, May 26, 7/2. And just because I saw Ryan just send it through, I have counsel that evening, so I will not be able to attend. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to add something else to other business. I just want to thank in advance Karen Richards and her team for upcoming PAN. I know that this has probably been a 24/7. I nicknamed her PAN Princess this morning. So I know it's a lot of work. I know that it's going to be really successful, but I just want to give her a big shout out. And I think we all should congratulate her and her team, which I know is probably going to be the most successful Police Appreciation Night ever in our history. So just a early shout out to, congratulations to you and your team. I think it deserves a little clap. As they say, Chair, give credit where credit's due. Congratulations.
Well done. With that, I can ask then for motion to convene into our private meeting for the purpose of consideration of the confidential items pertaining to legal and personal matters in accordance with subsection 44 2 of the Community Safety and Policing Act. Moved by Member Purchell, seconded by Vice Chair Jackson. All in favor? That carries.